Testing, testing. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our penultimate event of the 2025-2026 season. Tonight, before we get started, I do have a few announcements, but I'm very excited that Will Lavoy is here to talk to us about roots, the lifeblood of every plant, as we know, and he's going to tell us all about the hidden life of it. Will was a darling and brought a whole bunch of people here to be part of this event, so we're very excited. First things first, did everyone get a raffle ticket? We are raffling off these organically grown chives for your garden, but we are also, as a special treat, offering raffling off one of our custom designed t-shirts, 100% cotton, printed locally at a union shop here, so we're very proud of that. So that'll be one of the prizes for your raffle ticket, and we have other sizes if you're not an extra large and you are a winner. Also for tonight, just want to remind everybody, especially our longtime visitors, members, others who are here for general interest, this is our last night at the Knox room of St. Mark's Presbyterian Church. We have been here for a very long time, and we are now moving as of next month to the Ward 6 community room, which is in the City of Tucson Council Ward 6 Council, something like that. So we've sent out emails. We'll send out more emails. Also, we are changing days, moving from the third Tuesday to the third Thursday. So in May, we will be there on May 21st, same time, new location, new day. I promise you it will be an incredible experience, both for all of you who are joining us via Zoom tonight and those who like to come and visit us in person. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Will to talk to us all about roots. Take it away, Will.
Is that better? Hello. Okay. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for inviting me to speak here. My name is William Lavoy. You can call me Will. Today, I'm going to be talking about roots, the hidden half of plants. As you can see on this background, the slide background here, we have a picture of beans. It's the plant that I work with. It's the plant that I study, and I'm going to be talking about it a lot. I actually have these packets here with bean seeds, so please feel free to grab them on your way out. You guys are going to be learning about some roots as well as beans. Next slide, please. A little bit about myself. I am a PhD student in the Computational Plant Science Lab. I work with Alex Booksh, my mentor, where we focus on how plants work together to optimize the survival of the entire population. This is what my research looks like. I study root architecture in 3D to better understand how these roots can acquire nutrients. Next slide, please. Before, I worked in Thailand with mycorrhizal fungi in rice, where I focused on improving drought tolerance of rice. You can see me here on the left in the back with my team preparing pots for the greenhouse. And you can see what our field looks like close to Bangkok on the right. Before that, I worked for the San Francisco Botanical Garden. I also worked for the National Park Service at Muir Woods. So I've been working with plants for about 10 years, or for over 10 years now. I'm still not good at growing them, but I do know a lot about them. Next. You can kind of break this talk down into two major sections. First, I'm going to cover a lot of background information on roots and root-related things. Then we're going to talk about some root-related gardening practices. And really, my goals, my two main goals of this talk is to convince you to grow beans, because they should be part of every garden, as well as show you that roots are just part of a system, and to approach your gardens and the roots in your garden as such. We'll go into more details about that as the talk progresses. But As you can see in this photo here, this is a root system that we dug up from our field a couple years ago. It's a pretty nice example of the root architecture that me and my lab study. And the reason why we do it is roots are important. We care about these roots because they provide anchorage and support to the plant, so the plant just doesn't topple over. It's the primary site of nutrient acquisition. I just realized that's, sorry, hold on a second. Would from a thumb drive, do you think that would work better? Because this might happen a lot because I got a lot of photos. Yeah, sometimes the downloads, sorry you guys, are kind of wonky. And it should be the only file on there. Okay, the formatting's still on. Okay, we'll adapt. Sorry about that. You can just continue. I'll figure it out. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll figure it out as we go. But why we care about roots? They provide anchorage and support. They are the primary site of nutrient acquisition, mostly NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And they act as the interface between the plant and the soil environment and the soil microbes. When we think of what roots do compared to the leaves and stems, leaves are really responsible for taking in light and carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. On the other hand, roots have over 13 different minerals and nutrients that they have to be aware of and forage within the soil itself. So my biased opinion is their job is a little more difficult. Next slide. Just understanding the anatomy of roots and how they form. Really, when we're talking about gardens and farming, we're mostly concerned about flowering plants. So monocots and dicots. Looking at the anatomy here, we have monocots, dicots on the left, monocots on the right. Their roots look very similar. Really, the only differences are the vasculature that you, all good. The vasculature that you see in the center there. In dicots, they have that X formation, whereas monocots have these circles around that, that center circle. And when we're thinking about the form of the roots, generally, dicots follow this taproot system. So you can think of a carrot as it puts on a lot of roots. Most dicots do something similar, not with as an exaggerated taproot as a carrot, but they have that main root that comes out where a lot of lateral roots will branch off and continue branching to form the majority of the root system. When we think about monocots, most of their roots come from adventitious fibrous roots, Adventitious just means that they originate from stem tissue. As they branch out, some monocots will have hundreds of these roots that stem from the branch or stem from the stem. And they will make up the majority of the root system of things like grasses. Cereals, wheat, corn, rice. Next slide, please. And when we're thinking about different roots and different functions and different root types, there are a lot of different really cool, unique roots that have adapted and evolved over time. I can't go into all of them, but for our purposes, I'll go over of some of the more basic roots that you're likely to encounter. We have a picture of a corn seedling here, and going from right to left, we can start with the primary root. It's the first root to emerge from the seed. Generally, in monocots, it will eventually wither away when the rest of the root system takes over, but it's really important for establishing the seedling. Then we have seminal roots. These are roots that are also predetermined in the seed embryo. They will emerge and help the plant establish itself, but again, typically will wither away a couple of weeks once the rest of the root system takes over. Then we have the adventitious roots, which in corn are called crown roots. These are roots that come from the stem. And in this example here, will make up most of the root system itself. One cool adaptation that corn has are these brace roots. They're also adventitious because they originate from stem tissue. They occur a couple inches above the soil, and their function is mostly to support the corn itself. Corn is kind of has a weak stem, so to help it from blowing over during a storm, it has these brace roots that will come out and anchor it into the soil, and they have a very reduced function in terms of nutrient acquisition, but are mostly there for support. Next slide. But there is a really cool adaptation. You'll have to excuse the formatting here, where they produce this kind of like root snot for bacteria. As you can see in this photo here, it's covered in this mucilage. And this is an adaptation from an ancient Oaxacan corn variety, which these brace roots, they're very reduced and secrete a lot of this mucilage that then is colonized by nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And these nitrogen-fixing bacteria can account for up to 30% of the corn's total nitrogen. And it's a very unique and cool adaptation. And currently, there are researchers trying to take this trait and put it into other corn varieties or other species. Whether or not they are successful, we'll probably hear about in a couple years. Next slide. And now when we're thinking about root development, we really have to start with the apical meristem, just like the shoot. At the tip of these roots, they have this meristematic region where cells are constantly dividing. It is protected by this root cap, which is just a layer of cells that will protect that sensitive region. A cool thing about root development, it's driven mostly by auxin and this antagonistic relationship with gibberellic acid. And these two phytohormones have a antagonistic relationship throughout the plant, and they'll actually reverse roles depending if they're in the root or the shoot. So in the root, auxin drives a lot of the development. Gibberellic acid will inhibit it, but in the shoot, the roles are reversed. And this meristematic tip is responsible for a majority of the plant signaling and sensing. So things like gravity and light, as well as nutrients, are detected here, and that information is relayed to the rest of the plant. For example, if the plant is low in phosphorus, and this root tip detects a patch of phosphorus, it will signal the rest of the plant, and the plant will begin putting more roots in that area to acquire more phosphorus. So as cells are dividing and they get pushed up into this elongation zone, the cells begin elongating. And this action is actually what pushes the root through the soil itself. And once it's done, it begins maturing, forming root hairs, lateral roots, eventually stuff like lignin and suberin to get those woody roots that you see sometimes. Next slide, please. How do roots uptake nutrients? There's three main ways that nutrients can enter the root system. The main way that these nutrients enter is through mass flow. When we're thinking of mass flow, this is responsible for uptake of most of the mobile nutrients, so things like nitrogen, things that are soluble in the water. They will remain in the water table, the water column, and as you can see in this photo here, it's driven by transpiration. So as stomata are open and they're losing water because they're taking in carbon dioxide, you basically have these water molecules pulling on each other. So as water is leaving the leaf, it is pulling up water from the stem, pulling up water from the root, pulling in water from the soil. When we're looking at immobile nutrients, the two main methods that immobile nutrients enter the root system are diffusion, which is a very small portion, and then root interception. So nutrients like phosphorus that are trapped in the soil and don't move around much. Most of the way that these roots are uptaking this is by directly growing into the nutrient pocket itself. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking of roots and nutrients, their placement is actually really important. Like I just talked about, we have the mobile nutrients that are soluble in water. So as gravity pulls water down, it also pulls these nutrients like nitrogen down deeper into the soil. On the other hand, the immobile nutrients are trapped in that topsoil because they don't move around too much. So you get this gradient of different nutrient amounts in different layers of the soil. So you can see in this cartoon here that this plant has a lot of roots in the topsoil, so it's going to have much more access to things like phosphorus compared to nitrogen. And that's part of the reason we really care about root architecture. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to start talking about microbes and roots. Sorry. I think I got it. So we can mostly divide these microbes into a couple different categories. First, based on where they live, endophytic microbes live within the plant itself. Then you have rhizospheric microbes that live in the soil close to the roots, sometimes on the root surface. And again, we can divide these microbes based on whether or not they're bacterial or fungal, like mycorrhiza. And these microbes have a variety of different functions and benefits to the plant. As you can see in this graphic here, they can help plants with nitrogen acquisition, phosphorus acquisition. Over here, some bacteria will actually produce precursors for hormones that the plant will then uptake and turn into hormones. So these bacteria can actually influence plant growth. So other bacteria actually produce chemicals that help mobilize immobile nutrients, giving the plant more access to nutrients that it otherwise wouldn't have access to. Next slide. So when we're looking at endophytic bacteria, we have a nice, happy little bacteria there because he lives within the plant. He has a home and shelter. Typically, these bacteria will enter through the root, so they'll be in the soil and then migrate into the root itself. These endophytic bacteria that enter through the leaf, they can actually end up in the plant seeds and will be passed on to progeny. So sometimes these bacteria will lay dormant in the seed, and once that seedling establishes itself, will reemerge and help the plant establish itself as a seedling. One of the benefits of these endophytic bacteria is they compete for space. If you have a lot of these bacteria within you, there's less space for pathogens to take over and colonize. They also help induce plant systemic resistance. So they're really good at jumpstarting the immune system of the plants. So if a pathogen were to try and invade, the plant would be ready. And they also promote plant growth with phytohormone regulation, like I just mentioned. Next slide. Next, we have rhizospheric bacteria. Again, he's happy because he gets to live in the soil by himself, doesn't play by anyone else's rules. And this includes all free-living soil microbes or bacteria, which include symbiotic and pathogenic bacteria. Generally, they will exist within the bulk soil and are attracted to roots because roots will release carbon and other exudates into the soil. The plants or the bacteria will detect it and begin migrating towards the root surface. And some of the benefits that the symbiotic bacteria can provide are mobilizing immobile nutrients as well as breaking down organic matter, allowing the plant access to these resources it otherwise wouldn't be able to have. Next slide. So here's a really cool relationship and kind of where beans come in. They have formed this symbiotic relationship with a genus of bacteria called Rhizobia. Almost all legumes, which beans are part of, form this symbiotic relationship. This Rhizobia will colonize the root hair of these bean roots, will form these nodules, like you see here. And these nodules can provide an environment for these bacteria to start fixing atmospheric nitrogen for the plant to use. And the Rhizobia basically receive a carbon and a reproductive advantage. It's basically a high risk, high reward system for the plant or for the bacteria. If they are able to colonize, they can produce thousands upon thousands times more the amount of progeny compared to if they were just living in the soil. Next, please. The way that these nodules form is through a really complex signaling pathway, a dialogue between the plant and the bacteria. When the plant wants to form more nodules, it will release these flavonoids into the soil. The Rhizobia will detect those flavonoids, begin migrating to the root itself. The Rhizobia begin to stimulate these nod genes, which are part of the signaling pathway from bacteria to plant. Once it gets to the root, it will release this chemical nod factors. The plant will detect it and then start the process to form these nodules for itself. Typically, nodulation is encouraged under mild stress when the plants need a bit more nitrogen to be fully happy. If the plant has everything it needs, it has all the nitrogen that it will need for its reproductive purposes, hosting the Rhizobia becomes costly, and so we'll actually shy away from recruiting Rhizobia and forming these nodules. And under major stress, that carbon investment into hosting the bacteria actually becomes detrimental as it's trying to survive. Next slide. Lastly, we're going to be talking about mycorrhiza. This is a pretty famous picture here, kind of highlighting the extent that these mycorrhiza can grow into the soil and act as an extension of the root system itself. This is an ancient symbiotic relationship between a fungus, soil fungi, and the plant root. It occurs in about 80% of all land plants, and has been shown to actually most likely have helped plants colonize land. As plants were moving from ocean to earth, they didn't have the tools to succeed on the land itself. So by starting this relationship with this fungus, they were actually able to establish themselves, and they did pretty well from there. Most mycorrhiza actually completely rely on plants for carbon as well as their reproductive cycle. Next slide, please. And typically, you can categorize these mycorrhiza into two major groups, ectomycorrhiza and arbuscular mycorrhiza. Arbuscular are much more common. Ectomycorrhiza you normally find in large woody trees, so think of pine trees in the Northwest. And the major difference between these plants, or between the mycorrhiza, is that once the ectomycorrhiza enters the root, it doesn't enter the cell, it just stays on the outside, and that's where the nutrient exchange occurs. In arbuscular mycorrhiza, when they enter the root, they actually will enter the cell, form these things called arbuscules, and at those arbuscules is where the site of the nutrient exchange happens between the plant and the fungus. Next slide, please. As you saw in that photo, mycorrhiza are really good at basically acting as extensions of the roots. When we're thinking of the immobile nutrients like phosphorus, having that low investment for the plant to have more access to the soil itself really helps the plant uptake more phosphorus. It also competes with pathogens. If it's taking up space, less room for pathogens, which can help alleviate plant stress. And all the fungus asks for in exchange is some carbon. Next slide, please. But when we're thinking of all these symbiotic relationships, I just showed you a lot of benefits that happen as these fungi and bacteria are working together with plants. But this relationship really exists on a spectrum. It's not black and white. As you can see here, it's actually could be green, red, or yellow, or anything in between. Typically, we want to encourage a mutualistic relationship where the microbe and the plant both benefit, but under different environmental settings and conditions, that spectrum or that relationship can change to more parasitic. Like I mentioned before, a lot of this is driven by cost and benefit. If the plant doesn't really need the nitrogen, for example, it's just losing carbon, that rhizobia is more parasitic at that point. There are also other bacteria that will just exist within the plant as a mutualist, but once that plant becomes unhealthy or starts dying, that bacteria will actually switch to pathogentic and start breaking down plant cells so it can acquire as much nutrients as it can, reproduce as much as it can before the plant can die. So when we're gardening, when we're looking and caring for our plants, we really have to think about this spectrum and giving our soil microbes and our plants the tools to succeed and help each other. Next slide. So I'm going to transition more into the gardening aspect of roots. And I'm going to start with my opinion on microbial soil amendments. And the more I look into it, the more evidence I see that this is probably closer to fact. Most of these microbial soil amendments are a waste of money, unless under very specific conditions. I would not recommend buying any of them at a store. So the theory is that you're adding good microbes to soil to help the plants. I just talked for a long time about how much these microbes help the plants. So you would think that if you put more in, you're putting more good stuff, the plant's going to benefit more. The reality is these microbes are from different regions of the environment or of the states, and they likely benefit plants in that region under those conditions, like we saw with the spectrum. When they're happy with the plant that they've grown with, they'll make the plant happy. And if you don't have those right conditions, you're not going to be fostering a mutualistic, beneficial relationship. And on top of that, when we think of Southern Arizona, it's a very unique climate. It has a lot of its own adapted microbes. When you add these soil amendments, really what you're doing is you're putting microbes in there, and in a month or two, they're completely gone because they can't compete with the native microbes that are here already. So like we want to support small businesses because we like Tucson or we like our neighborhoods, we should also support our local microbes. Next slide, please. So we want to encourage these local microbes, and we want to think of everything as a system that works cohesively. When we have healthy soils, we have a healthy microbial community. We're going to have healthy roots and healthy plants. We can't really have one without the other. So when we're looking at our gardens and thinking about our plants, we want to think about everything as a whole. Ways that you can encourage local microbes in your backyard, using stuff like organic matter. When you're adding stuff like compost, manure, leaf mulch, either as a soil dressing or working it into your topsoil, you're actually feeding the microbes that are there already. That will break that stuff down into nutrients and resources that your plants can use. Things like organic mulch are also really good. Wood chips, straw, leaves. Not only are you adding more organic matter, you're covering the soil, which will help keep it cool and retain moisture so that the microbes can do the things that they're meant to do, as well as you're gonna reduce weed emergence. Another really good thing that I would recommend is cover crops or intercropping or polyculture systems, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Because as you're adding more plants, each plant is going to be exuding different chemicals into the root, supporting different microbes. So when you use cover crops, especially things like beans, which I just showed you has this really specific relationship with bacteria, you're basically encouraging these bacteria through your cover crops to come in. And when you're using beans, you're also adding nitrogen to the soil. Next slide, please. So talking a little bit about fertilizer. Typically, we break down fertilizer into two categories again. We have organic and inorganic. Organic just means it comes from a living source. And when you're using organic fertilizer, you're promoting your soil health and you're promoting the microbial communities because you're giving them stuff to eat and break down and then continually reproduce. Typically, organic nitrogen sources come from poultry droppings and manure, and phosphorus will come from stuff like bone meal. And inorganic just means it comes from a non-living source. So either a rock, or it can be a chemical or a synthetic process. Inorganic nutrients, fertilizer is easily accessible for plants. But the overuse of them will degrade soil health, and the runoff can enter water columns and the water table and end up polluting the environment. Typically, any NPK fertilizer like Miracle-Gro, which you can get at any store, but oftentimes we think of inorganic fertilizer as being really bad. Next slide. So why does modern agriculture use inorganic fertilizer? And the simple reason is it's just organic fertilizer just isn't efficient. So we have this giant cornfield here, hundreds of acres. Not a single drop of organic fertilizer is ever gonna hit that field. The reason is when farmers use organic methods, they reduce their yields by 25%. When we're thinking about feeding the world, making sure people aren't hungry, the inefficiency of organic fertilizer just doesn't make sense. Farmers aren't known for being wealthy people, so a 25% hit to their bottom line is gonna cause a lot of issues for them. And the reason that organic fertilizers aren't efficient is that those nutrients need to be broken down by microbes before they become accessible to the plant roots. Plant roots can only uptake inorganic forms of these nutrients. So when you add inorganic fertilizer, it's instantly ready for these plants to use, and why you see it in modern agriculture systems. But we're not farmers. I'm at the Organic Gardeners Association. The next slide. So when we're thinking of our gardens and our backyards, organic is perfectly acceptable, and I would actually encourage it. When you are doing organic gardening, sometimes you get cool critters like this praying mantis. This is a photo a couple years ago from my backyard. Because I'm not spraying it with insecticides or pesticides, I'm instead using natural pesticides. But organic practices at home are going to promote healthy soils, which promotes healthy microbial communities, which will promote healthy roots. You're maximizing your resources. You're making sure you're getting the most that you can out of everything you put into it. You're reducing pollution, and you're creating a much more sustainable system. But as a quick note, Southern Arizona isn't really known for its good soil quality. So if you need to add inorganic fertilizer to keep your plants alive, I would recommend it because using a little bit or using some inorganic fertilizer is going to be better than having dead plants. It's really the constant use of inorganic fertilizer is when you're going to start degrading the microbial communities and the soil quality, which would then affect the root health. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to talk about is polyculture, gardening or farming. You can see in this photo here, kind of, we have a bunch of sunflowers, corn, squash, and beans, all growing next to each other. This is typically called a polyculture. And the idea behind it is when you're growing multiple different species, you are, these different plants are gonna fill different ecological niches and end up benefiting each other. I'll give you a good example in a second, but this tends to be popular in areas with limited access to fertilizers, as well as modern agriculture equipment. I was just at a conference, and all the people from Africa are doing these really cool studies with these polycultures to try and get the most that they can out of the limited resources and land that they have. So when it comes to their form of agriculture, that soil health, the microbial communities are really important to them, which you just don't see with our modern farming techniques. Next slide, please. So one of the most famous example of polyculture would be the Three Sisters. It's the growth of corn, beans, and squash all together. Evidence has shown that this practice has been practiced by the indigenous Americans since 1070 AD. And this is a really good example of different plants filling different ecological niches, which benefit its neighbors. Corn provides a natural trellis for the beans to climb. The deep roots of the corn bring up water from deeper areas of soil to shallower areas. Beans, like I mentioned before, with their complex relationship with bacteria, will encourage rhizobial bacterial communities, will host rhizobia, fix nitrogen for other plants to use. And squash provides this ground cover to retain moisture as well as suppress other weeds. That doesn't mean that you have to do polyculture farming in your backyard. It's just to give you an idea that when you're growing different plants together, you are filling different niches and they will end up benefiting each other. So if you're into a lot of flowers in your garden, grow different flowers, and you'll see chances are you're going to be seeing better results. Next slide, please. So talking about watering and root health, water is obviously a scarce resource down here in Tucson. When I'm doing research and talking to other researchers, I'm actually lucky because I got to tell them I get heat stress for free. If I want to study heat, this is a great place to do it. The issue is when you mix that heat with other forms of stress, like drought stress, then you're giving the plant a lot of trouble. Most plants are just going to wither and die, especially during the summer. So you really have to be considerate of the plants that you grow. It's really important to select varieties and species that are adapted to these unique local conditions so that they can thrive. When we're talking about watering, I think the best ways to go about doing so are using buried drip lines or infrequent deep soaking. This allows the water to hit the root zones that we care about before it evaporates. You can see this photo here. All these happy, healthy bean plants. This was harvested last year from our field during the summer. And these were grown with drip lines where we're able to give the water directly to the roots themselves. And we don't have to worry about the roots not getting enough. The caveat is that overwatering reduces oxygen and allows disease to grow. So finding that balance between watering enough to keep your plants healthy and not watering too much to promote disease can be very tricky down here. So typically, I would suggest watering when your topsoil is dry. If you wait till the plant starts wilting, oftentimes that plant will have a hard time recovering and just end up dying itself. Next slide. And now we get to another really cool bean. I consider it a southwestern gem, and that's the tepary bean. You can see here this really pretty selection of different tepary bean seeds. Part of the reason they're really cool is that they are a wild ancestor to dry beans. So think of a weird cousin to your pinto or black beans that you like to eat. They're extremely heat and drought resistant, and they've been grown by indigenous people for over 2,500 years in Mexico and the southwestern United States. You can grow them during the summer with almost no water. You plant them at the very beginning of the monsoon season, and those monsoons will provide all the water the plant needs. If you want to start growing a little earlier, you can just provide them a little bit of water, but they will grow really well during the summer in your yard. They will establish those rhizobial communities because it is a bean. It has that relationship with rhizobia and will add nitrogen to your soil. I'm trying to remember my last part. Oh, high in protein and fiber. So they're also really healthy. Next slide. When we're talking about root diseases, because we want to keep our plants healthy, the ways that you can detect root diseases are through molecular sampling of the plants, molecular sampling of the soil, digging up the roots for inspection, which will probably kill the plant, or remote sensing systems like drones. As gardeners, we don't really have access to that, nor do you need it. And the last way to detect fruit diseases is symptom detection, which is stuff like wilting or leaves dying. But at that point, your plant's probably going to die. So when we think about root diseases, we have to think about disease prevention. Next slide, please. Because that is the reliable way to keep your plants disease-free and healthy. By the time the plants get all wilted like this, it's going to be too late. They are going to die, or most likely going to die. And when we think about disease prevention, the biggest contributing factor to root diseases is water. And overwatering will basically flood the soil, which pathogens love. They love these saturated, low oxygen conditions. So if it's constantly flooded, they're constantly going to be reproducing until the point that they're able to infect your plants. So really to prevent that is infrequent watering, which in southern Arizona is kind of tough. So really finding that happy balance between watering enough to keep your plants alive and not watering too much to encourage disease growth is kind of a tricky tricky thing down here. Other ways you can do it is just by improving your soil drainage. If you have poor soil in your backyard, using raised beds, adding compost to your soil, or if you're growing in pots, things like perlite or vermiculite to improve the drainage. Diseases tend to occur in unhealthy, stressed plants. So if we're thinking of the system of our backyard and our soil, if we're keeping everything happy and healthy, the chances that diseases are going to emerge are very minimal. How am I doing on time? Okay, next slide, please. Another thing I'm going to cover really briefly is propagation through roots. You can see this photo here of this monarch caterpillar on top of this milkweed, inspired by my friend Mary. So you can propagate several species of plants through their root systems. Things that you would see in southern Arizona are going to be things like coneflower, phlox, horseradish, mint, blackberry, and milkweeds. But this process does not work for succulents and cacti. It doesn't work for most large trees or shrubs. Next slide. So you have to make sure if you want to try propagating through roots, you're doing it with the right plant. And what you're doing by propagating through the roots, you're just taking advantage of a very specific plant reproductive strategy. This will often evolve in areas where plants are experiencing a lot of soil disturbances, maybe things like moles or gophers that are constantly damaging the roots. Some plants just figured out if that root gets separated, just grow a new one. You can think of potatoes. This plant will produce a lot of potato tubers. You can take any of those tubers, plant it, make a new plant, and a bunch more potatoes will come out. So it's the same kind of idea. And when we're doing these root propagations, we want to really consider doing it during mild conditions. Summer is not a good time for this because the emergence of the shoot will be heavily stressed. Typically, so here's another photo of a milkweed. So typically, if you want to propagate through roots, you want to dig up the roots, cut them into sections along their nodes, not on the node, but next to it. And you want to make sure that they're big enough that the plant will be able to establish itself. You also want to make sure you're maintaining that same orientation of the root system when you found it. Like you can see here, if you were to have planted that root sideways, those stems are going to pop out and be upset that it can't find any sun. And then just as pretty normal precautions, you want to keep the soil moist. You don't need to use any rooting hormones. You can just let the plants do their own thing by themselves. Next slide. I'm going to cover transplanting really briefly. So some plants, like beans, unfortunately, they don't like transplanting. They have very sensitive roots. Because you can see here, it's a really small plant. And for some species, any damage to this small plant is just too much for it to recover. So you want to make sure that if you're transplanting, you're not doing it with a plant that wants to be directly seeded. But yeah, typical protocols, you just want to make sure the area that it's going has plenty of space for it. So, and you want to make sure that the soil that you're planting it into isn't too hard or compact. So breaking up the soil around it, as well as making sure it's moist, will kind of help the plant transition to its new home. Again, you want to transplant when conditions are mild because you are damaging the roots. You don't want to then give it a big shock with a whole bunch of sun and a whole bunch of heat directly after that. Once they're transplanted, you want to water immediately after, but you want to be really careful with fertilizing and soaking because these roots are vulnerable. If you soak too heavily or add fertilizer, you're going to encourage pathogenic infection. Next slide. And this last topic that I'm going to talk about is root binding. As you can see here, these roots have basically taken the shape of the pot that it was grown in. So this is happening when root growth is being constrained by the container size. And this can cause issues for the plant because it's only able to acquire so many resources from that container. So if there's a whole lot of shoot growth, but a limited amount of root growth, you're going to end up stressing the plant because the roots can't support the shoots. So typically, you want to repot or even just prune your roots every 12 to 18 months. This pruning can just help stimulate new root growth. And next slide. And typically, when you're doing this, how much you cut away is determined by how big your plant is. You want to cut away from outer or bottom areas and avoid tap roots and the older woody roots because those roots are going to be major sources of nutrient transportation. And make sure you loosen the rest of the root system before you replant it. And you want to consider if you're pruning large plants and you're cutting away a lot of root, you may need to offset that by cutting and pruning some shoot. Because again, if you're removing a lot of the root system, it might not be able to support all of the shoots. So you just want to consider that if you're using if you're pruning like a tree or a small shrub or something like that. Slide. So this is coming to the end of my talk. The key takeaways that I hope you can go home with are that roots are critical for plant health. They are the site of soil resource acquisition and the site of interface with the soil environment and the microbes. Root health, soil health, microbial communities are all interconnected. We really want to consider this when we're looking at our plants at home. And organic practices are really good ways to promote these relationships and promote your plant system, gardening system at home. And last tidbit, I think everyone should grow more beans. Last slide, please. I just want to thank you. Specifically my friend Mish here. He has a cactus nursery. He helped me put this presentation together with a lot of really good gardening tips. I also want to thank the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. They are a really great resource. These people, they also helped with a lot of information, not given, but on their website. This is a really great resource. The people at the Cooperative Extension, their goal is to give you guys information for your gardens or for farmers locally in Tucson. Highly recommend visiting their website for any gardening tips or things to do in your backyard. And that's it.
I never knew there was so much to learn about roots. So fantastic. Thank you all. Now's time for Q&A. So we'll take audience and online, audience online. How's that? Yeah, I know. I'm gonna go. You didn't let me finish. So if you've got a question, I'll bring you the microphone.
I can also just repeat the question.
Why did you pick beans to do your doctoral thesis?
Sorry, what's the question? Well, when doing your PhD, you do what the funding tells you. So I just happened to be lucky enough that I joined a lab that focuses on beans, but it wasn't a choice. It was just I guess a hack. Now I've been working with beans and learning more about them. I really like them. And I just want to remind everyone, please grab bean seeds on your way out. Put them in your yard. Another question?
I have a question from our folks at home. Besides temporary beans, what other varieties of beans are good for growing here in the desert?
So there are a lot of different varieties. I wouldn't know them off the top of my head. There are other resources like I think Native Seed Search. They do really well in making sure that the varieties they sell are varieties that do well here. So I would recommend maybe visiting their website and looking at what they have to sell.
I had a question about propagating plants through cuttings, whether they work best in water, why certain plants, the cuttings will grow roots if they're in water and some won't.
So when it comes to root cuttings, you typically don't want to do that. When we're talking about shoot cuttings, I guess the easy answer is that different plants just have different strategies. That's what you can find almost every example or counterexample in the plant kingdom. Typically, if they really like that large soak, my guess would be that they come from a region that's dry, and they're going to be waiting for something like a monsoon to come through, really soak that soil before they establish themselves. I had a question over here. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you recommend mushroom compost?
Mushroom compost, I don't know much about it. I would say if you're adding anything organic to your soil, that is a good thing because you're just basically providing food for the microbes to break down and give access to the plants. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is just specific marketed products that say add this mycorrhiza to your soil. But something like a mushroom is you're giving the soil food. Sounds like it's perfectly fine, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, so I have heard lately from a bunch of different people who say that plants totally absorb nutrients through their leaves and or like only the roots, not the like. What's your opinion on foliar feeding and like plant absorption? Do you have an opinion on that, like as far as nutrients versus leaves or roots?
Yeah. So plants don't absorb nutrients through their leaves. Well, I'm sure there has to be some weird plant out there. What a lot of plants will actually detect chemical signals, and they'll intake that through their leaves. There's actually a large body of research about people adding specific hormones as a foliar application to kickstart certain processes. But those, what you're spraying on there isn't nutrients for the plant to use and turn into carbon. You're giving them certain signals to kickstart certain processes. So as far as I know, generally those foliar applications aren't a nutrient itself, but more of a signal to jumpstart something. Yeah.
Okay, I have two. The first one is, can you successfully ground plant citrus that have been in pots for several years? Not sure if that's up your alley, but.
Ground plants that have been in pots for. Okay. Okay, yeah.
For several years, like.
I don't see why not. The only issue is going to be the soil that you're planting it or putting it in. If that plant has spent its whole life in the pot with that really nice soil, it might have a hard time moving to Arizona soil. But really all I can say is maybe it's worth a shot. Yes.
So
Oh, sorry.
hang
Sorry,
on.
hold on one second, Mary.
One. Hang on. Is compost tea from worm castings and backyard compost a good way to introduce beneficial microbes?
Oh yeah, 100%. So when you're adding compost, whether it's worm casings or a backyard setup, compost setup that you have, you're not introducing microbes. You're giving the microbes that are there food and encouraging those communities to develop. But yeah, those are excellent ways to encourage those communities to improve soil health.
Yeah, my question is on improving the soil.
Yeah.
So just, I'm confused by like the organic material, like I compost. So my compost is improving the soil, but the plants can't quite yet benefit from that because the microbes have to break it down. I'm having a problem grabbing that slide.
Yeah.
Where the fertilizer, you said the chemical fertilizer is almost like instant food for the plant.
Yeah, so that's because when you're adding organic fertilizer, you're adding food for the microbes that break it down into forms that the plants can use.
So how long in general does it take when I do my compost in my soil? I'm improving the soil because my desert soil is terrible. And then how long does it take for the microbes on average, like to break it down? And how often should I keep adding my compost? Should I do it like once every other year, 5 years, every year? I mean, how much would you recommend for that, improving that soil and keeping that micro feeding going, I guess?
I wouldn't really know a good answer to that. In terms of timing, I just don't know enough specifically. But if you're doing it regularly, you're going to be constantly encouraging and improving soil health itself. I'm sure you can, but when you're adding a lot of compost, I would just keep it not a regular thing, just doing it occasionally. Maybe if you are thinking about when's the next time I should add compost, maybe think about when are you going to start planting stuff, and then putting organic compost before, so that there's time to improve that soil health and for those things to break down.
So my question is, and I think you might have been pointing to this in the presentation, that do roots migrate towards moisture?
Yes.
And is it at the end of the roots that are the most nutrient gathering?
Yeah. So that elongation area, that's more in the cell division area, because it's more sensitive and it's I guess softer. More things will pass through. Those areas tend to be where most of the nutrients come in. Asked about sensing.
Yes.
Sorry, can you just repeat that part one more time?
Since that the roots will seek moisture ground. Like if you're watering a wide ring, that the roots will be, moving to where the moisture is.
Yes, they'll definitely, because a lot of plant roots are really good at what they do. They've developed all these sensing and signaling systems, and if water is an issue and they find sources of water, they are going to be growing towards it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kind of the concept of oyas, yes? When you put an oya in the ground and you pull it out after a year or so, it's covered in roots.
Sorry, what is?
Oyas,
Okay.
OLLAS. Have you heard of those? They're the terracotta pots that you put in the ground, and they have a, yeah, it's seeps. Correct.
Okay, that sounds like something I should look into.
You should look
Yeah.
into it.
If you scratch dry organic fertilizers into the top half-inch or so, is that sufficiently fertilizing the deeper roots?
Yes and no. Every plant is different. Every plant has different requirements, especially at different developmental stages. So I can't say that for sure. If it's a small plant and you're adding enough compost, it's going to be enough, but a bigger plant might need a little more. I can't really give a solid answer, but I would just recommend paying attention and being observant of how your plant is responding.
I just had a follow-up comment about the question about mulch. And basically you just keep an eye on it, the compost. So if you spread it on your garden, as microbes start breaking that down, and sometimes little insects or whatever, it will become thinner and finer and thinner and finer. And so when it starts looking like if it can look dusty, then add more fresh compost. So you have a bed with black looking soil and it has very fine black soil, that's delicious topsoil. So that's what you want. That's what you want. But you put like some straw on top or some more compost or some more mushroom fertilizer. I use a combination of worm casting because it's already that fine. It's already been digested by worms, and like the mushroom compost or straw, which is bigger particles, takes longer to break down. So I kind of give my soil more choices. But you just kind of keep an eye on it. And as it starts looking old and worn and a little thin, just add more compost. And in Arizona, it depends on what you're growing and where you're growing. My wood chips, I put them down 3 years ago. They're fine. They haven't changed. My straw, I renew every time I plant, every season I replant. I like straw for my vegetables because I can move it around easily. And it doesn't rip nitrogen out of the soil for decomposition. So just keep an eye on it. If you have big, dusty, well, not, hopefully not dusty because it's too dry. In black soil, it's good topsoil.
Any other questions? Yes, we've got one down here. Coming up behind you. Oh, just talk into the microphone if you will.
One of the initial slides, it showed, and it indicated at the end of the root at the tip, and it called it a root cap.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you find the need to prune the roots for whatever reason, will they grow another root cap? Is that a?
Yes. Typically, if you cut a meristem off, another meristem. So if we're thinking about a root that has these branches, that main root is the dominant meristem. Basically, what happens is you cut it, kind of screw up all the signaling, and what ends up happening is the lateral will become the dominant meristem instead, and that will drive the growth after pruning.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay.
The root expert here. I'm always confused. So I pull weeds. I committed to, okay, no herbicide, no pesticides. So I'm trying to find that balance where I'm planting plants to choke out the weeds and doing different things so I don't have to pull. But what's your thought on the roots? Like if you have weeds, and you mow them, just to mow them down, should I just leave the roots? Is that good for the soil or should I be pulling them or both?
It depends on the weed you're growing and how much effort you put in it to it. If you want, I guess, deterministic way to get rid of weeds, you pull the root out. If you don't want to go through all that effort and just want to mow it every now and then, you can do that as well. So it's really up to you, depending on what you're growing. Those presence of weeds might not be taking up too many resources from your other plants. So if you're like vegetable or if you're vegetable gardening, weeding becomes more of an issue because those weeds will be taking up nutrients that would turn into stuff you eat. So it's really whatever you're comfortable with and how much effort you want to put in.
I think it also depends on what type of weeds, because some weeds, if you leave some roots in the soil, they will regrow the plants. Some plants, if you cut them back to the soil level, they will not regrow, but they are still providing function by allowing, air and water to get down there. So I think it depends on your type of weed. I wouldn't leave if you could, like if it was Bermuda grass or something, I mean, I would try not to leave anything.
If you just cut it off. She's right. Barbara's right that some things can grow back. But at the end of the day, if you're killing it and you leave that in there, that's organic matter that's going to break down over time. So it can only improve your soil, right? Unless it's Bermuda grass, which is the devil's product.
Also around the roots, even if they're weed roots, you have a good microbial habitat around there, right? And so you're actually, when you pull any plant out, if you're taking any soil or anything, you could be leaving some of that in the soil. There's no reason not to.
Okay, so I have one last question, and then for you folks online, if you've missed anything, please email us and we'll get an answer out to you. My last question is from the same person. How does foliar feeding differ from soil drenching, and do you recommend both?
So foliar of certain chemicals is really just a way to jumpstart certain processes. If you're growing vegetables, that might be a good way to maybe improve the yield. Foliar applications, I'm not very familiar with specifically. I've seen them been used successfully. So my recommendation is try it. If you like it, if you see results, continue using it.
So, you know, this comes from a person that used to thrive in tilling the garden every year and, you know, digging things up as much as you could and putting other things in there. Is it, and now I do just the opposite. I do everything possible not to disturb soil. And is that generally, you know, sort of the way to go to basically try to keep the soil, the microorganisms, besides feeding them in ways, you know, which I'd use like compost tea or mulch, compost mulch or whatever. Is that, you know, wise?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert at a lot of this these gardening stuff. So if someone wants to jump in and help me here, go for it. From my understanding, is as long as you're not over-tilling, introducing, working the soil and adding a little bit of compost and a little bit of oxygen might be ways to kind of kick some new microbial growth or kickstart some microbial growth. But I don't think you need to. And you don't really want to make sure you're just not overworking the soil itself. But a little disturbance isn't going to ruin your soil health at all. But if anyone else has some information they would like to add to that,